Hey everybody. I'm right between tutoring sessions and I wanted to pop on and film this real quick and talk to you about some SAT vocabulary. I had an idea to do something about this month since we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the SAT. But just this morning, I ran into a problem with a student that they asked about from their homework, and it made me think about something I wanted to share with you. So let's chat. I'm Daisy Loofs. I help people build flexible, profitable online tutoring businesses like me, specifically by specializing in high demand niches. And SAT is one of the best subjects out there. All right, vocabulary. So vocabulary feels like the part of the SAT that should be pure memorization, right? You either know the word or you don't. But that's not always the case. And for instance, vocabulary does show up as words in context. So we do have context clues that can help us out a lot. This test gives students a short passage with a blank and four answer choices. You may already be aware. And the student's job is to pick the word that fits the sentence. Blah, blah, blah. We get it. This is vocabulary, very typical at first to what you may have seen on other standardized tests. But when I tutor vocabulary, I rarely tell students to memorize giant word lists. That is just a terrible use of time for most students. Yes, we did do that years ago when vocabulary used to be on the SAT a long, long time ago. They had like 1,000 word banks that you were supposed to practice and memorize and do your note cards. But there's so many other things you could focus on besides just the few tiny vocabulary problems. And not only that, there are actually two guidelines that I tell all of my students for vocabulary, and I want to share them with you as well today. So number one, first, try to decode the word. Try to break it down into its individual parts, either the prefix, the root, or the suffix. Second, trust the outlier. Let me show you what I mean with those two. So first, the first guideline is to try to decode the word. A lot of harder SAT words are built from roots and prefixes that are very common in other words in our language. So even if a student has never seen the word before, they can often take it apart and get close enough to figure out what it might mean. Take the word dentifrice. A lot of students and a lot of tutors, including myself, have never seen this word before. But let's break it down. Dentifrice. So dent at the beginning, what else does it sound like? What about dentist, dental, dentures? Lots and lots of other words in our language have to do with teeth when they have that dent at the beginning. And sure enough, the word dentifrice has to do with toothpaste or the substance that you use to clean your teeth. So even if the student cannot actually define the word, they might be able to figure it out by using other words that sound like it. On the SAT, close enough is often enough. Another word I saw recently was sacrosanct. Now, again, if a student couldn't define sacrosanct exactly, maybe they see the word sanct in there and think sanctuary or saint or something religious. And sure enough, that's what it has to do with. So they may not need the exact definition. They just need to know whether the word fits the sentence and have a rough idea of what it means. And the same thing also works particularly well with prefixes. If you think about your prefixes, pre, of course, means before, re means again, like repeat, omni, omnipotent means all, sub, submarine, subway, sub means under. Even a tiny piece of the word many times can help a student rule it in or rule it out. And so that's something that I really focus in with the students on, something to try to break down the words when they just have no idea what it means. So let's look at an example because this is one I helped a student with, like I said, just this morning. This is the problem we were looking at. Let's check it out. While most animals are incapable of passing somatic mutations, genetic alterations that arise in an organism's non-reproductive cells, onto their offspring, elkhorn coral, Acropora palmata, presents an intriguing blank. In a 2022 study, researchers found that elkhorn coral produced offspring that inherited somatic mutations from a parent. Okay, so number one, there's a lot going on in that sentence and a lot more than we even need. Like, for instance, this Latin pronunciation, you don't need that. That has nothing to do with the actual sentence. Even Elkhorn, if it's bothering a student or it's tripping them up, I show them how to like kind of do away with all of the stuff that's leading you astray. I would even say this part in the middle of the dashes is kind of cumbersome. But what is important? All right, so when we go through and read this, what I help the students notice is, first of all, I'm starting off with one of the contradictory or like a negative transition word, while. So I might have opposing ideas going on here in a minute. So while most animals are incapable, there's a prefix. I know it's not part of the vocabulary we're about to choose from, but it's a vocabulary word in here. So I need to make note of these strong words, the while, the incapable, because that means not capable. So while most animals are not capable or able to pass, I don't know what somatic is. I don't have to. I do know that my students from biology understand genes and genetic transfer and things like that. So they can pick out the main ideas here, and that's all we need. So here's the idea. While most animals are not capable of passing on these gene alterations onto their offspring, coral presents an intriguing opposite of that. So coral is able to do this apparently, but I need to keep going. Never ever stop right at the line. In a 2022 study, researchers found that coral did produce offspring that inherited these mutations from a parent, as we expected, because we were already coming off the wild. And so we expected them to transition to the opposite. Now, which word presents an intriguing, try to fill in the word yourself before you get there. I would say like an intriguing surprise or intriguing example, something like that. And then let's go through the words and see what we have here. Hypothesis. We know a hypothesis is a guess. And while some students might like that, they did not guess this, they actually found it. So it is not a hypothesis any longer. It's been determined to be true. Affinity. A lot of my students will know that affinity means to, it's a positive word, that we're drawing near something, closer to it. You have an affinity for it or like a likeness for it. That's not what was happening here. There was nothing about these two things being pro together. And I also come down here to corroboration and look at the root word, the prefix co on that. Corroborate, even if they don't know what the entire word means, I think of like cooperate, right? That means getting along. And this is not a getting along situation, which means the affinity, the co here, both of these, we are trying to find an opposing viewpoint, which lands us with anomaly, and anomaly is going to end up being the correct answer. If a student is not aware, the anomaly is like a standalone situation here, which is why it's an intriguing anomaly. So not only are you trying to help them break down the actual vocabulary words, but you're also looking at the passage itself when the passages get really dense and really tough, and trying to break down the words there and not get too caught up in all of the things that they have going on in the sentence. Okay, the second guideline, though, I want to tell you about, classic SAT. It really shows exactly how the SAT works. A lot of the time, a student will recognize 3 of the answer choices as vocabulary words they're familiar with, but then they have no idea what the 4th one means. And guess what that means? A lot of times it is that 4th vocabulary word that they do not recognize as the outlier that is going to end up being the correct answer. So what happens is most students avoid that word because they don't know it, but that's the trap. The unfamiliar word feels risky, so they try to force one of the familiar words to work, even when it doesn't. I want students doing the opposite. If they can confidently eliminate the three words they do know, then the word they don't know has to be the answer. They don't have to define it, they just have to prove it by eliminating the other three. This is really uncomfortable for students to do at first. They want to know what the answer means before they pick it, but the SAT doesn't always require that. It requires the right answer. And remember, what we've been talking about in this whole series is how the SAT is a logic reasoning test. By forcing you to eliminate the three words you do know and only being left with the one you don't know, that's a logic skill to recognize, okay, well, it has to be that one because I eliminated the other three. It's just an uncomfortable skill because you're choosing the outlier. And as humans, as social beings, we don't like to be the outlier. We don't gravitate towards the outlier. We like group cohesiveness. So that can be really challenging to choose that one. But if the three familiar choices don't fit the sentence and the fourth one is left, you got to pick it. Let's look at an example for that as well. Here's one. Right away, looking through the vocabulary list before I even read this, there's one word that I know students haven't seen before. Can you guess which one it is? Ameliorate. Very unlikely that they know that word or that they've even seen it. So it automatically should jump out to students as the outlier and the potential correct answer if we can make sure the other three don't work. So let's go in. I'm going to mark some things as we read it if I feel like we need anything. Despite, oh, negative word there. Despite the generalizations about human behavior they have produced, many studies of behavioral psychology have used highly unrepresentative subject pools, students at the colleges and universities where the researchers are employed. So I would pause there and just make sure students wrap their mind around this part before we go past the blank. So despite the generalizations about human behavior they have produced, so negative word, many studies have used highly unrepresentative subject pools where they just get students at the college and universities where the researchers are employed. So apparently they're doing studies over a very small pool, but then they're generalizing that to all of human behavior. To blank this situation, it is necessary to, so I would immediately say, ask my student, what word do you think is going to have to like go in here? Like to fix this situation, it is necessary to actively recruit subjects from diverse backgrounds and locations. So to fix it, something about fixing this situation. Does fix mean to sanction? That means, well, that means you're going to check it off, that it's great. So we're not going to sanction it. We're not going to rationalize it. Rationalize, students can usually figure out, piece together a way to explain that. That rationalize means you accept the answer. We're not trying to accept it, we're trying to fix it. To postulate, the only time they would have seen postulate would be as a noun in geometry that was kind of like a theorem. 50-50 if they're going to recognize that. Postulate is like is another form of postulate from geometry. That just means a rule. Basically, none of those have anything to do with like altering it, changing it, going out, thinking like fixing the problem. So therefore, it would have to be B just because we eliminated all of the other answers. And sure enough, do you know what ameliorate means? It means to make a bad or unpleasant situation better. There you go. So for vocabulary, teach two moves. Number one, decode the word if you can, using either prefixes, the root in the middle, the suffix, And if you can't decode the word, eliminate what you do know and trust the outlier if you have to go with the outlier. If there's clearly a word that's kind of standing out as different than the rest because you maybe have never seen it, go with it. Between these two guidelines, students can get vocabulary questions right without memorizing hundreds of words. But let's talk more about SAT. I've got more coming up next week. Subscribe to the videos, follow me here, and I'll be back next week. Until then, happy tutoring, friend.